Number 5 on this list is Bonesworth. Bonesworth initial drawing was done back in 2020, but hardly any info was released on this creature until very recently. The Trevor Henderson wiki says, Bonesworth is a skeletal being that is missing the lower half of its skeleton. The creature's skull is toothless and made up of 2 parts, the first noticeable one being a type of shell or plate that covers up its actual skull. The plates appear to be a creature skull, split in half and resting on its regular one. Now on to its actual skull. In none of the 4 known photos of Bonesworth the inner skull can be seen. With further examination, a crack on its inner skull that forms a cross can be seen on its forehead between its eye sockets. The creature has oddly elongated arms that he seems to walk with. It could be a ghost, a failed experiment, or possibly both. He also seems to only want to attack people who either have recently done something wrong or mean if they are a criminal or if they hurt Bonesworth. He is also known as Counterclockwise Jack. So that's what he looks like, but what does he do? Well, for a long time, we weren't sure. But on February 15th of this year, Trevor gave us a few clues. He posted some more images of him on his Instagram, and this time he captioned the photos Bonesworth. Once Bonesworth, named after a once popular phone game said to be key to summoning him, he latched on to his favorite. He's almost impossible to get rid of. Only able to be seen by the person he is currently following. Bonesworth often brings insomnia and sickness. So, that is a lot more info that we just got. He didn't tell us exactly how to summon him, but he said that it has to do with a phone game of the same name. He also tells us that if you do summon him, he will be almost impossible to get rid of. Ultimately, after reading that, I don't think that summoning this dude is a good idea at all. He gives you insomnia and makes you sick, and you're literally the only person who would be able to see him, so everybody around you would just think that you're going crazy. Number 4 on this list is the Man in the Creek. The Man in the Creek is one of Trevor's newest creatures to date. It was posted on May 30th of this year, and very little is known about this thing. As we can see in the image, we are in a beautiful forested area that looks to be very thick. There's an opening into the bush in front of the viewer with a lone branch going directly through it. On the other side of this branch, barely visible in the darkness, is the grotesque looking face of a creature. The Trevor Henderson wiki says the Man in the Creek appears to be a disfigured human. It has a long head and long arms. Its skin color resembles its habitat. It is a green-grayish color. The legs can't be seen in this photo, so we're unsure if it lacks legs. And that, guys, is literally all we know about this thing. Its origin, why its face is the way that it is, the abilities that it has, whether it's friendly or not, we really have no idea. The only thing that we know for sure is that Trevor has been referring to this as the Man in the Creek. Hopefully he spends a little bit more time developing this character so we can discover the lore surrounding it. Number 3 on this list is the Clatter. The Clatter was initially introduced into the Trevor Henderson world in late 2021. In November of that year, Trevor Henderson posted a picture on his Instagram of a new monster. The picture was a grainy photograph of this creature stopping in at a gas station. Probably really pissed off about the gas prices and going to voice its complaints, but more on that in a later video. This creature resembled a moose or deer in size and body type, however, that's where the comparisons come to an end. There was absolutely no flesh attached to this creature at all, or at least not the type of flesh that we're familiar with seeing. Its entire body was made up of what looked to be antlers. These antlers were intertwined with one another and created this very creepy skeletal thing that was very similar to, like I said, a deer or moose. Maybe the creepiest part about all of this though is that they were covered in blood. The antlers looked stained with blood as if it had just been in contact with it. basically alluding to the fact that this creature is fresh off of murdering someone or something. This picture was posted back in November, and the caption to that image was, "A being of lonely truck stops, empty woods, abandoned hunting spots. The angry wasted remains, antlers sharp as malice." Now this is all that we heard about this creature for a long time. After it was posted, the Trevor Henderson community went abuzz, starting to discuss what type of abilities it had and where it came from. The community ultimately decided that it would be named Antlers and concluded that this beast must be able to levitate and that it can communicate by changing the pathway that wind blows through its body. We started to believe that this was the last of this creature until February 15th. Trevor posts another few pictures of this creature, and this time the caption reads, "The Clatter. Lonesome entity made of discarded antlers of all shapes and sizes. Haunts rest stops, hunting blinds, and tourist traps in secluded woodsy areas. It's named after the horrendous noises it makes when it moves, and its cry is like the wind blowing through bones." So now we know that this creature is actually named the Clatter, and that it likes to hunt for victims in more secluded areas close to the woods. No one has any idea how this creature came to be and how it gathered up the discarded antlers. All we know is that it exists and it's dangerous. We also don't know of any weaknesses either, but considering it doesn't have any flesh on its body, I can't imagine that there are too many weaknesses to speak of when it comes to this creature. Number 2 on this list is Sticky Note Guy. Okay, so this thing is not named Sticky Note Guy, but like I really have no idea what this thing is or what it's called, so I'm going with Sticky Note Guy. This image was posted on May 28th, and Trevor captioned it with 3 emojis. One was an eyeball, another was a piece of paper, and the third was a red marker. As we can see in the photo, this creature is levitating and looks to be in some type of superstore of some kind in the washing machine section. We can also see on the bottom left of the screen that it says 2022, as in that's when this photo was taken. Now, in all honesty, we know nothing about this guy. Heck, I don't even know its name. But on July 1st, Trevor Henderson posted another image to his Instagram that gave us just the slightest bit of info. He made a tier list of all of his monsters and ranked them by how friendly or deadly they are. This creature made it into the orange tier, which reads, "Don't get close, don't look at it, don't speak to it, don't think about it, mimetic hazard." So, I think it's fair to say that this beast is dangerous and will hurt you if it chooses to do so. And finally, number 1 on this list is Slimy Swamp Ghost. So for those of you who frequent Twitter, this name might ring a bell to you. Slimy Swamp Ghost is actually Trevor Henderson's official Twitter handle. I guess that kind of encapsulates Trevor's energy if you think about it. Anyways, Slimy Swamp Ghost is Trevor's new Twitter banner. He posted it on his Instagram on June 25th, so literally not that long ago at all. This banner isn't just a few words though, there's a creature on it as well. Suspended by several ropes tied to its limbs, we can see a very long-armed creature with no facial features hanging in the middle of the photo. This is an extremely skinny creature and it almost looks like a complete skeleton. Its hips are almost pure bone, and its super long arms seem like they could be snapped by a strong wind. We can also just barely make out the fact that it has some super long fingers as well. A humanoid creature that is hanging above the ground may be being carried by some bigger entity. It looks like the backdrop of the photo is of a forest, so this doesn't give us a whole lot of clues, but it does give us a frame of reference to the size of this creature. Which then makes you wonder what sort of thing could be holding this thing up like a marionette. Trevor is really good at throwing small things into his photos that make you wonder and cast doubt. Having this creature be suspended like this makes our imagination start to cycle through possible creatures that could be holding it up. The size and abilities of these creatures off camera would have to be immense. Whatever it is that's holding this thing up, I imagine that this thing is what Trevor is calling the Slimy Swamp Ghost. Considering it was posted on June 25th, it is his newest drawing to date. Number 5 on this list is Moby Dick. Even if you haven't personally sat down and read the famous story of Captain Ahab and his hated rival, Moby Dick, I feel like everybody has at least heard of the story. Well, turns out it might not be completely fictional. What culture says, Moby Dick isn't a myth in the traditional sense of the word, as he's the bane of Captain Ahab's existence in his book by Herman Melville. Still, the idea of a vengeful and vindictive whale has permeated the modern zeitgeist as the target of one's obsession, which is mythical in its own right. In 1820, Captain George Pollard Jr. was in command of the Essex when it was sunk by a whale. He survived and returned to Nantucket, where he was given the 2 brothers to captain, but after 2 years he crashed it on a coral reef and was thereafter determined to be unlucky at sea. Pollard's troubles with the Essex came from an 85-foot albino sperm whale, which directly attacked and smashed into the ship. The whale returned to attack the vessel at greater speed, and the Essex began taking on water, leaving the men to flee. Pollard was away from the vessel when the attack occurred. When he returned shortly after the whale slammed into the vessel a second time, he saw his first mate, Owen Chase, who told him, "We have been stove by a whale," and with that, the legend that would become Moby Dick was born. So, Moby Dick, literally this super famous story that always seemed to be fictional, turns out to be based on something 100% real. Now, I know that Moby Dick wouldn't necessarily be classified as a myth per se, but I think it's close enough. Also, RIP to my dude Captain George Pollard Jr. He literally suffered so much on the sea and was thought of as such a bad ship captain that he inspired one of the most famous stories literally ever. Number 4 on this list is dire wolves. For those fans of Game of Thrones, this one should stand out to you. What culture says, in games like Dungeons and Dragons or television series such as Game of Thrones, dire wolves have been depicted as gigantic wolves capable of easily taking down a large man. They are often described as vicious, hard to train, and efficient killers, but the myth of the dire wolf doesn't exactly line up with reality. Dire wolves were real animals, which went extinct about 9,500 years ago when the last major ice age came to an end. Dire wolves weren't gigantic monsters, but they were big animals. Most specimens that have been studied show the dire wolf to be about the same size as modern gray wolves. They weighed around 132 pounds and were capable predators. Their teeth were larger and had a better shearing ability than their modern cousins. They had the strongest bite force at the point of the canine of all canis species. This made it possible for them to prey on horses, camels, mastodon, bison, and humans living during the Ice Age. It's likely tales of their ferocity gave life to the mythological abilities of the animal, which persists today. Sadly, dire wolves are long gone, even if they do sometimes pop up in our nightmares. So the legend of dire wolves has been exaggerated a little bit, but it's all based on fact. I would imagine that our ancestors from 10,000 years ago really had their hands full when it came to these things. That's probably how the legend all started. We were getting shredded by these dire wolves back in the day, and then through word of mouth it just kept getting passed on through the generations that these are big creatures. Thankfully nowadays we just have regular wolves that we have got to worry about. Number 3 on this list is the platypus. Okay, so we have had a lot of scary creatures on this list already, but I just had to throw the platypus on here as well. The platypus, for those who don't know, is a very real animal that still exists today. But back in the day, people didn't think that it could possibly be real. What culture says the myth of the platypus is an interesting one due to the obvious fact that the creature exists. But what we know now and what people believed in Europe in the 18th century, that's a different story. The platypus was first described by Captain John Hunter in 1798. meat. Hunters sent a platypus pelt and a sketch of the animal to Britain, which was a common thing for sailors and naturalists to do when they found a new species. Unfortunately, the naturalists in Britain didn't believe the animal could possibly exist, and as a result, a myth grew surrounding a very real animal. So for a long time, no one thought that the platypus was an actual thing. They had it chalked up as a myth for years until more and more people saw it and it was proven to be real. They are absolutely weird looking animals, so I understand why people may have thought this. Like, let's face it guys, there really isn't a whole lot of animals out there that look like a platypus. Anyways, for quite a while this was thought of in the same vein as dragons or other mythical creatures. Number 2 on this list is Imoogi. This was actually a mythical creature that I wasn't familiar with until researching this video. Imoogi are Korean dragons which resemble all forms of Chinese dragons. They are often depicted as long, snake-like reptiles with 4 legs. Unlike European dragons, Imoogi do not have wings and are considered benevolent creatures related to water and agriculture. While there is no such creature in the fossil record, there is something similar called the Titanoboa. Titanoboa was the largest snake to ever slither across the ground, and various specimens have been found indicating they could grow up to 42 feet in length and weigh as much as 2,500 pounds. It's highly unlikely anyone in Korea would have ever seen the bones of a Titanoboa, as the creature's range was throughout the rainforests of what is now South America. They died out around 58 million years ago, so the comparison between the myth and reality is entirely coincidental. Like most dragon myths, the Imoogi likely arose from ancient people who found bones belonging to the extinct species. Korean findings that gave rise to the myth of dragons likely came from marine reptiles or dinosaur fossils. Additionally, tall tales spread about creatures like Imoogi until they explode into mythological beasts. Titanoboa is something we have talked about on this channel before. The sheer strength and power these beasts would have had is almost unimaginable. It's believed that they used to eat crocodiles and alligators like they were nothing. Think about that guys. Just chowing down on one of the biggest reptiles in the world as if it was a light snack. Maybe the Chinese caught wind that these creatures existed back in the day, and that's what sparked the myths of the Imoogi. Number 1 on this list is the roc. I love eagles and birds of prey. I think that they are super cool, but this is a bit too much. The roc is an enormous bird of prey found in mythology originating in the Middle East. The giant bird was popularized in various fairy tales and folklore from the region, and there's a roc in 1001 Nights, as well as many other popular stories. Marco Polo recounted his identification of a roc in the 13th century. It was for all the world like an eagle, but one indeed of enormous size, so big in fact that its quills were 12 paces long and thick in proportion. And it is so strong that it will seize an elephant in its talons and carry him high into the air and drop him so that he is smashed to pieces, having so killed him. The bird swoops down on him and eats him at leisure. The roc, as it has been described, didn't likely exist, but there are analogs in the fossil records which could easily have given birth to the myth. One such creature was the elephant bird of Madagascar, though the myth could have easily been born by sailors' accounts of large eagles capable of carrying off newborn lambs. Marco Polo, last I checked, is a pretty reputable dude, so I'm gonna take what he has to say pretty seriously. Clearly, he was super scared of what this beast could do, and if he was so scared, that kinda makes me scared as well. Nowadays, we know that these would have just been the birds from Madagascar or just great eagles. So this myth was kind of real, just not exactly how we thought.
Number 5, Lake Michigan. Okay, so this is not a totally forbidden lake per se, but many of the times out of the year it is. The second largest of the 5 Great Lakes in North America, and the most vicious. This huge body of water sits between Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, and is a bolstering 1,000 feet deep. That's a lot of room for creatures to be just lurking around. Dinosaurs of the Great Lakes have been an inspiration for hundreds of years. The First Nations people of North America, predominantly the Ojibwe, Chippewa, and Huron peoples, were the first to inhabit the surrounding lake, and they have seen and heard some pretty disturbing things over the years. Due to its ferocious currents, the lake is officially off limits multiple times times during the year and can result in tickets and fines if caught. With the 4th of July weekend just behind us, we can clearly see how the beach closures and off-limit areas mark the unsafe, fast-flowing water this time of the year. And although this lake is swimmable, the deepest parts of it are certainly not for the weakest of doggy paddlers. Just in 2021 alone, the lake took 53 people's lives, which, sad to say, is a record in itself for the least amount of people lost. And on average, about 100 people drown each year on Lake Michigan. Though the rapids are a danger in itself, the creepy stuff comes from what swims beneath. Stories and myths have been passed down generation to generation, but the consensus of the lore surrounding the Great Lake is of its monsters both under and above the water. Plesiosaurs, sea serpents, or just sturgeon. Sturgeon can grow up to 300 pounds and are a local to the Great Lakes, regularly mistaken for monsters such as Bessie, Lake Erie's lake monster. These fish are often mistaken for spiky dinos. The great sturgeon of Loch Ness in Scotland is the inspiration behind Nessie and the Loch Ness monster herself, or so it seems. And of course, not only under but on top. Along its shores there have been sightings of some pretty weird stuff as well. Bigfoots and human hybrid creatures have been seen and documented here for thousands of years. Yikes. Yetis and dinosaurs, huh? Yeah, that's safe to say. Not only should you avoid the water and swimming completely, just avoid the beach as well, huh? Number 4, Natron Lake. This next one is a bit of a trap. Literally. Not only is this lake forbidden at all times to swim and drink in, even the air around it makes it for harsh camping. Lake Natron, located in Tanzania, East Africa, is a strange body of water as it's one of the most toxic and dangerous lakes in the world. This stunning, shallow, saline lake is a deadly one, with disturbingly high levels of natron, which is sodium carbonate decahydrate. Eek. Nasty stuff. And due to the millions of years of basically brining and preserving everything it touches, this has allowed the lake to concentrate into a caustic, toxic nightmare. Yo. Basically, it just pickles everything and turns it into stone. Okay, I see now. A real-life Medusa lake. I would just be mid-air in a cannonball, frozen in time forever. Cannonball! Terrifying. Takes more than just a look to turn to stone, however. The water and the air mixed together is what gives this lake the preserving feature. You wouldn't just come out a rock. You would have to kind of just sit there for a while in the same spot while the compound breaks you down. Yeesh. The beautiful stills of all of the creatures frozen in time, bound by art, are alluring and elegant, yet sinister in its effect. It's a gentle reminder to all around that although it looks inhabited and full of thriving fauna, the gargoyle statues left behind is a message in itself. Mother Earth has a weird way of making some of the most beautiful and enticing things the most deadly, I'd say. 3. Nyos Lake. Much like Lake Natron, this next lake is also known for its deadly liquid and off-limits swimming. Lake Nyos is located in Cameroon, West Africa, and is the inspiration for films like Volcano with Pierce Brosnan. Its location is a terrifying surprise in itself, right on top of an active crater. Perfect. Lake Nyos sits in a crater on the edge of an active volcano in the Oku volcanic field, and not only is this lake forbidden due to its chemicals above the water, pools of magma lie only 80 kilometers below its surface. Imagine snorkeling looking down at that hot magma. We gotta go! Eventually, the gas becomes too concentrated and huge bubbles of CO2 burst from the lake, and being above all that magma, it releases toxic levels of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and that's exactly what happened. In 1986, the lake recorded an explosion that claimed the lives of countless amounts of people and animals in the surrounding area. A silent, invisible killer bubbled off the surface and down the hills surrounding the lake, taking the lives of nearly everything in its path. Sadly, scientists would only discover its cause months later. The cloud of carbon dioxide rose out of the lake and flooded into the valley below at more than 100 kilometers per hour. The suffocating gas killed nearly 1,800 people and approximately 3,500 in livestock and countless amount of species in birds and insects. P.U. Silent but deadly. You know when insects can't dodge it that it's really bad. Although to this day there's no official evidence of anything living and or swimming in the lake, the locals claim to see things moving on its still surface from time to time, which in itself is a horrifying claim. So not only could there be creatures living in this toxic sludge made out of who knows what, but that the rustling of the surface water could mean yet another deadly explosion. Active or not active? You tell me. Number 2, Boiling Lake. Located in the islands of the Dominica and considered one of the world's heritage sites, Boiling Lake in Morne-Trois-Pittons National Park is a hot topic to say the least. A subtle 4-mile hike through the jungles of man-made paths sits this earthly anomaly. After a strenuous hike through thick flora sits this mysterious bowl of water known solely as the Boiling Lake. The second largest boiling lake in the world, this is not to be confused with a hot spring, as its waters are sweltering and in the middle of the lake actually boiling. It's basically a giant breathing vent under the Earth's crust and releases hot vapors through its fumarole and heats the body of water to literally a boiling point. Travelers are reminded not to be enticed by the refreshing blue-gray water after the difficult hike up, as jumping in it to cool off would result in a chef's feature soup. Behind, hot soup! I said behind! The name, from its boiling nature, is one of the hottest natural lakes in the world, with the temperature topping 90 degrees Celsius around the outside alone, and in the middle, who knows how hot. Although it's impossible to slip into, it's too hot to handle and is unfortunately restricted all year round. The people of Dominica once believed, due to the heat of the water, that this could be the opening of hell itself, or the mouth of the underworld. Claims that the albaca, a shape-shifting devilish creature that makes deals on behalf of the devil, has been known to congregate in areas of high spiritual meaning like this one. And due to the haze and fog and humidity, the visuals can become distorted, especially at night. Is that Dad or is that a mist monster? I don't know. Although no tourists have actually claimed to see any creatures stirring around or swimming beneath the humid hot pool, it makes a great birthplace for story and myth, and holds a high significance among the locals. No hot tea monster, huh? Okay. No soup monster either? Yeah? Okay, just wondering. We tried. And coming in at number 1, Groom Lake. This one's an obvious one, and I left it for number 1 as I feel it's the most interesting of lakes, and I personally think it's home to a number of mysterious creatures. Aliens. Groom Lake, located in Nevada, is home to, well, no lake. A salt flat now, as it's been dry for quite a while, considered to be one of the most secure and off-limits military bases in the world. You can't even visit here to see it yourself. Travelers can come close to its perimeter, however, but with the armed guards and warning signs that states very clearly the punishment if breached, needless to say, is very off-limits. Built somewhere around 1955, there is much mystery and lore surrounding this famous base. The home of the famous Storm Area 51 movement in 2019, this place is claimed to be home to a couple different creatures. It's believed that the famous crash site of 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico resulted in material and bodies recovered and shipped during the middle of the night to Groom Lake. Although the government and US military claim that this base is strictly a military research base, it is commonly related to UFO and aliens due to the high strangeness heard and seen there. The base is completely off-grid and is the apparent site to test planes and underdeveloped technology. Some claim that they have seen orbs, UFO motherships, alien hybrids working on planes alongside humans, and a number of paranormal activities. Can you pass me a Phillips, please? No, thank you. It is said to hold different races of aliens such as the Greys, the Reptilians, and the Tall Whites. It is subject to a variety of spy planes developed over the years and is said to be the birthplace of the future of technology. Not allowed to go there, see it, or even talk about it. Yeah, there's definitely aliens there. At least it seems like everyone's getting along, that's good. Famous claims by people like Bob Lazar, a scientist and propulsions expert, caught media attention in the early 90s, claiming that he had worked there and worked on UFO vehicles himself, trying to reverse its technology. Numerous pilots and scientists have also claimed to have worked alongside aliens for years, and apparently have the key cards, clearance, and proof to show for it. Its reputation has grown over the years, revered and feared, and remains forbidden. What do you think? Hoax or underground alien facility?